Hello there recent people, who there here, and welcome to my channel. And today we're going to be having quite a deep look at Delta, and we're going to have a look at all the nodes, and we're going to have quite a good look at how it hangs together. I'm going to generate 2 or 3 patches so you really do get a good feel about it. I was very fortunate that the developer of this particular product, Marcus from Static Cling, I happened to be messaging with him last October 2018, and he knew what I was, he knew I was into MIDI and all the rest of it, and asked would I like to actually have a look at Delta, and of course I said yes. So I was alpha/beta testing this for quite a long time before it came out onto the market. I know it was probably well into sort of a year of development what actually went into this. Now, players in general tend to fit into one of 2 categories. There's utilities, and in that sort of category you'd find things like filtering notes, changing your velocity, transposing notes and all that sort of thing, and Delta does all of that. So that's one product that does all of that. The other category is really your creativity side of things. So polystep sequencer, quad note generator, and obviously there's several other sequences, and there's quite a few others out there as well. And without a doubt, Delta is 100% creative as well. And if anything, you could say it has to be slightly more creative because you've got to be creative to make it creative. But it's absolutely brilliant to use. So let's actually jump in and see what Delta really is all about. This is really known as your workspace. These we call these nodes, and you just sort of drag them around, drop them around wherever you need to put them. You're going to find every single node has what's called either an output and an input, but they'll always have one or the other, and you'll always find the output's always on the right hand side and the input's always on the left hand side, and they're also marked as green and red as well. It doesn't matter if I drag from the output to the input, or I could even go from the input to the output, so you can drag either way, and I'll show you a few other ways that we're going to cut these lines and draw extra lines in a minute. Down the left hand side you've obviously got some different options. The first one being is these are all our different nodes which we can go and grab, and it's just a case of just grabbing a node out, and here's it happens to be what's called a merge node. This node's really more used for keeping the screen tidy. It doesn't really do anything else, but I'll show you another little usage which I can actually use that for. This is actually going to delete, so what's ever highlighted I can obviously hit that and it's going to delete. And if I just quickly Control-Z that and put that back, this happens to be a copy, so I can now copy that node and I can just paste it as many times as I want. If it happens to be connected up, it's going to paste it connected up as well. This is the properties page. Whoops, obviously there's nothing in there because this is just a merge, it doesn't do anything. But if I say click on the input, we do actually have this option in this one called auto stop. Before I go on, all the property pages and all the nodes will have this little question mark which actually will tell you exactly about that particular node in question, or actually only some of these options of what you can actually do. We will be using auto stop later on, and you'd see it's quite useful when we're having loops going that we may need to stop it at some point, because in the middle of the song you want it to start and you'd like to be able to control it and stop it, and I'll show you how we can actually do that quite easily. As I said, that brings up the properties page. This is the main global sort of settings. So at the moment you can see I've got a nice big grid at the back. We can make it smaller. We can make it even larger. So it's absolutely massive. I actually prefer this grid either down to the half, or I'd even turn snap off. The only problem with this kind of application is even I get a little bit OCD and I think, oh, actually I want this line to be straight. Of course it doesn't matter at all, but hey, that's just a bit of OCD kicking in there. And at the bottom we have what's called our mini map view. So you're not restricted to this area. It's actually a massive area which you can scroll to. So if I was actually to have this, and I could shove this up here, if we look at the mini map you can see that's where that particular node is, and that's where these other ones are. So I can come here and go, ah, that's there. And it's a quick way of actually navigating around. And then obviously I can grab that and bring it all the way back down again. There we go. If I double click on the background, it's going to hide that particular view. So this will bring it up and hide it. At the same time, if it's up, I can double click here and hide it. Or I can double click on any of the nodes and it's going to bring up the properties for that node. say merge splitter happens to be a bad one because there's no properties on it. So let's just go and grab something like this, and now we can see that we've got some properties which we can change. A good one to know about, on the back actually, it's got a list of all the shortcuts, so you don't have to go hunting around to the manual to find the shortcuts. Here they all are listed on the back. There's two shortcuts which are really worth knowing about. One is when we're going to hit control and we're going to take a link out from this node, because if I don't hit control I'll end up grabbing all these at the same time. So if things was happen to be wired up in such a way, you might suddenly go, oh actually I want to take this one here, which I can't do, so I can hold down the control key, bring it across and just drop it in. The other real handy one is, well hang on a second, I made a mistake, I don't actually want that linked up there. Oh, how can I remove it? Well again, if you hold down the Alt key and drag, you get this little line and it'll actually delete. And you can do multiple, so you can actually delete multiple things at the same time. So what that was, again, just to let you know, was holding down the Alt key. Oh, what's that on the Mac? Is that the Option or the Command? Oh, I can't remember. And you just drag across, let go, and it'll delete everything at the same time. So they're two very powerful ones. As I say, that control, I use it a lot. And obviously the deleting, I use that a lot. As I say, click and drag, you can absolutely grab absolutely everything. And then obviously we've got our copy and paste. So let's actually get on and have a good old rummage under the hood. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is actually reset this device back to the default. And what I've got over here, let's pull that up, is I've got another Radical piano which happens to be set up to one keyboard, and this is actually pointing at another keyboard. And I'm just using this to start with, just to go through a couple of the nodes, and then you'll actually start to see maybe and hopefully realise how powerful Delta really is. So I'm actually going to disappear for now, and then we're going to carry on. So at the moment, over on the Radical key, if we actually listen to it, we've got ourselves a very basic echo. And we can do exactly the same thing over on Delta. So I'm going to obviously click on the plus, and what I want at the moment is this thing called a delay. So I'm going to bring this delay in. I'm just going to quickly link it up one to one. I need it for an output. And the output, by the way, it's not audio output, this is MIDI output, and it's going to send it down the line. So if there was another player, it'll actually obviously pass it onto the player, or in this case it's going to pass it onto the instrument. What I'm going to do to this, I'm going to make sure it's set up the same. So I've got obviously the original note and 4 repeating. So I've got the original note coming through and 4 repeating there. So if I was to play the echo, first of all, and now I'm going to play the delta. Obviously I played delta a little bit quieter there because it's velocity sensitive. So you can actually see, okay, to start with, they're sounding the same. We can obviously turn the pitch up and obviously transpose it. And well, yep, we've got a transpose over here as well. So again, here is the echo and the delta. Same with velocity, we can have obviously velocity going up, and there's obviously velocity over here. Probably not quite the same settings. So far, as you can see from this one node, I'm doing virtually everything what the echo note can do. However, as you all know, well, I can actually turn that note off, and so it's not going to echo that very first one and only repeat the last 4. In Delta, we have what they refer to as the dry event, so we can actually turn it off. So that's the equivalent of turning that off. But of course, what we can do with echo, we can come along and say, actually, I'm going to remove that note. So we're going to move on to our next node to be able to do the same with Delta. And what we need here is something called the sequential switch. Now, this is the number of steps we can have, and it can go up to 8. But don't be fooled thinking, oh, it can only go up to 8, because obviously we can actually start hooking these together, and in a minute I'll show you a patch where I've got quite a few going, and so it's not an issue at all. So I only want to get rid of one, don't I? So I'm going to go from the output into the input, and the amount of notes I'm going to need here is actually going to be 5. So I'm going to have my original note, and then we've got, as you can see on the echo note, there's actually 5 placements. So the first one's going to be wired up, second one's going to be wired up, third one's going to be wired up, the fourth one's not going to be wired up, and then we can wire up that one. So again, so the echo note will now sound like, and delta will sound like, yeah. So we can do the same, but there is actually quite a big difference on the delta side on really how this switch is really working. Because we're only playing one note, you'd feel like it's exactly the same as the echo note. It's not. Every single event which comes in to the sequential switch will go out on its own separate line. So at the moment, if I was to play a chord now on the note echo, I keep calling it echo note, don't I? You can hear it. You can hear that chord being echoed perfectly. However, on delta, when I play it, the first note's going to go out here, the second note's going to go out here, the third note's going to go out here. On the second echo, nothing's going to be heard on the first note, then it's going to go out on the second note's going to go out on that 5th line, and then we come into what's known as a round robin. So it's going to round robin it back to the beginning, and that third note is going to go out on that first line. So let's just play it, you can hear it. As you can see what's going on. So there's a big difference between the two. Now, nothing stops us from actually doing exactly the same as what Echo Note's doing. And I've actually generated a patch for actually doing that. And let's see, where did I actually put it? Here we go, Echo Poly. So let's bring that in. And as you can see, this is quite a big sort of patch. And this is actually going to be able to allow me to play up to 16 notes, or 16, put 16 notes in a chord at the same time, and it'll echo exactly the same as the note echo. So actually, let's just hear the that same chord. So again, this is on the note echo, and then this is obviously on delta. In fact, I've actually got one short, so that had 3 at the beginning. Actually, I've only got 2 there. But I think you sort of get the idea, really, what we're actually doing there. And as I say, this is how we can actually get loads of sequential switches, obviously, all wired up as well. Might look very confusing, might look very complex, what was going on there. Believe it or not, it was just this sort of thing duplicated out many different times. So it's quite straightforward to really follow when you're actually wiring that sort of thing up. But the key thing is now, is we've actually done the whole of note echo, and within delta we've used 2 nodes out of 17 possible nodes. We really are at the tip of the iceberg with delta, with what we can do to it. On this line coming out here, I could actually decide to say, actually I'm going to transpose that note. Out of this one here, I'm going to get it to play a chord. Out of this one here, I might say, no, I'm going to play it normally. And on this one here, I might do another transpose, or just even move it rather, I could have that moving by octaves, and I could have this one moving by semitones. I could do it that it goes louder, as you could see when we was playing around with the velocity, but when it gets to a certain point, it goes quieter again. I could have the velocity really loud on this first one and really quiet on the second one. It is so flexible. So actually, let's actually now start building up something, well, I'm not going to use the word useful, but let's actually build up something a lot more interesting than what we've actually got there. I'll even go through 1 or 2 little tricks I like to do. One of the things about the delay as well is this obviously only 60 notes. This will go up to 32 notes for a delay, and just like in Spinal Tap, we can go all the way up to 11, and we've got a manual stop, so this would just keep repeating until we actually decide to, we turn around and say to it, actually, I want you to stop. And that comes back to what I was talking about at the beginning to do with this auto stop. So auto stop is a way of like resetting everything that's going on inside delta when you hit a certain amount of notes. So at the moment it's never going to. But if I had one and I was halfway through this pattern and I hit a new note, it will actually go back to the beginning and it'll actually have that note going through. And obviously you can set this going up and up and up and up and up to 64. I'm going to actually use 1 because whenever I use a delay of infinite and having this set to 1, it means, and obviously another new note coming in is going to keep repeating that. It doesn't make sense to have this constantly repeating as you add in more and more notes because it's just going to become a bit of a racket. Yeah, so we want to replace the notes. And my first little trick I do, and you see it on a lot of my patches, there's something called an if statement, and this is a lovely little if statement, and you can change a number of different things. So obviously we've got a MIDI note we can do it on velocity, and we can do it on note name. I'm going to leave it on the actual key, and obviously we've got different operators of greater than, equal and greater than, less than, equal and less than, equal and not equal. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to say if it's greater than, and I'm just going to bring this down to quite a low key, there we do, C1 will do me for the moment. I'm actually going to pass the signal on. So anything that's coming into this input, I'm going to pass on to that delay, and we're going to go to the output. So now if I hit a key, because we've got the transpose going up, I can stop it by hitting a key C1 and below because it's looking for everything greater. Anything now which is below this value comes out of this route. This route doesn't have anywhere it's going to, and because I've got auto stop set to 1, it stops the delay. So I can have it going. I'm now going to hit C1 and I can stop it. Obviously I could have C1 going off and you can actually hear C1, so let's do that. And I'm going to hit C1, and any key I play below C1 you can actually hear. But by having it off, it's a nice way that we can actually control delta without having to do anything with the stop all. So we can actually stop and start things in the middle of a track. And you'd see when I have stuff which is like running like this, you'd always see I actually have this little if statement. So if you ever wondered why isn't it connected up, well, it's because I'm using it really as a bit of a key switch, or in this case stopping it. I'm actually going to reset this, and we're going to actually have a look at, say, some of these other options, what we've got going on here. So let's actually grab ourselves a transpose. Now a transpose, and sorry, I'm just going to change my grid. I'm going to take off snap to grid. I'm just going to make it slightly smaller as well because that's what I prefer. So with a transpose, you can obviously go up by semitones, you can go down by semitones, and you can also very easily go up by octaves by hitting obviously the +12, or go down by octaves by hitting the -12. So I think that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually have it going, say, down a key. So I'm going to be able to hit a key, it's going to come into here. And in fact, actually, let's make this a lot bigger as well. We can have a bit of fun with this, I think. I'm just going to scroll the screen along so we get some of these options here. And that is just a click and drag to highlight things. And in this particular case, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it to the output of the transpose, and I'm going to have that in. So it's going to go play normal, then it's going to transpose high, then it's going to play normal. And I think, well, I want to do something with this one here as well. And let's go and add a chord. There we go. So on this one here, I'm going to add myself a chord. Obviously I'm going to have a space, I'm going to add a chord. Because I've got a chord playing, I'm going to give it a little bit of breathing space, and then on this one here, I'm going to add myself another transpose. I might, let's have a play of going up this time. So I have one stuff going down, this one can go up. And if you listen to that at the moment, let's see what we got. So at the moment, I wouldn't exactly say, hey, that's really sort of gripping stuff. But if we start to speed things up, and obviously have this delay going a lot faster, it's starting to get a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make myself a bit more space, and I'm going to actually add some other extra little things in between these two here. And one of the nodes I'm actually going to add in, so we looked at transpose. We've got this transpose random, so let's grab that. And what transpose random is going to do, as you probably guessed it, it's going to be a random. And we can actually say how many octaves down we want to go to how many octaves up we want to go. I'm going to leave it as default actually on the 12 and 12 for the moment. But if we play this now, yep, it's playing, but it's all over the place. But we can actually do something about that as well. So again, under note, so we're still under note, we can actually go and get the Quantize note. And you might recognize what this looks like, and that's very similar to what you get in the scales and chords. Well, we can come along and actually say, I don't want you to play any of these notes, say for instance. So it's now sounding slightly better, and obviously if we was to put a lot better sound onto that, it would probably sound even better. So let's go and grab a different instrument very quickly. I think that's sounding quite nice the other day. And yeah, it's now starting to sound quite musical, I think, in a way. And yeah, we could actually probably do some more stuff with this patch as well. And you're just not, you know, there's no limit to where you start and to where you're going to stop. What I think I'm going to do actually over here is I'm going to actually replace that with, sorry, it's down here off the screen. I'm just going to put another delta in this side. And actually have a play around with some more of the nodes. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the snap, because that's what I prefer. Just change my grid size down. Really changing the grid size is more to do with if you've got snap on, but I just use it really as a visual thing. So let's have a look at some more of the nodes, and sorry about that ping in the background. Let's have a look at some of the more of the nodes. I'm just going to close something down. There we go. One node we haven't actually looked at yet is the set note. As you better gather really from it, is we're actually going to make it a specific note. So it's going to come in, and whatever note we're playing into this, we're going to change it to a very specific note. And yeah, let's actually have a quick look at how we can actually use this. So I'm still going to put that to one side for the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually grab myself a transpose and wire this up into the output. And I'm going to transpose it, there we go, just by 3 semitones up. So when I play it, wrong keyboard, but you don't know that I'm actually, what key I'm playing, because obviously I'm playing 3 notes down from what you're listening, because it's transposed up. But the reason I decided to choose this, one thing you can't do, as I said, you can't take that output and put it into the input. But you can create feedbacks, and you can get some very interesting results using feedbacks. But just like your amplifiers or anything else where you cause feedback, you should try and control it. If you don't control it, you're going to get some unusual results, and you will get some unusual results with Delta as well. And just think about how much MIDI you might be throwing around, because it just might cause 1 or 2 glitches. And so using the MIDI merge, I'm able to create myself a feedback on this transpose. So I'm now going to hold the control key down and just get that line out to the output, and I'm going to play a key. But before I play a key, what do you think is going to happen? As I say, that transpose is going by +3. Believe it or not, that's what happens. It's going that quickly. It's trying to play as many keys as possible. And you're also going to be restricted to what you're actually listening to by the instrument underneath, of how many voices that instrument is going to be able to produce at one time. Because we can't hear that, we're going to add something into there, and I'm going to add myself a simple delay. Sorry, we want a delay. So previously we was using this as like an echo delay, really, and now I'm actually going to wire this up, and I could just wire that straight into the delay if I want. I'm just going to leave it there for the moment. I'm going to come into the delay. I'm going to say turn the dry off, so it's not going to play the first note. I'm going to put it down to a count, and I think we need something faster than a quarter note. I think we need something like an eighth. Yeah, that would do. So now I'm going to play a key. Now you can hear it stopped, but it's still running. And the reason you can't hear it is because obviously the scale of, it's gone over the scale of what Radical Piano covers. And when it actually gets to the end, i.e. 127, it's just going to carry on saying, no, I'm greater than 127, I'm not going to add 3 onto that, and it'll just carry on looping around. So it's actually there playing along. So if we was to choose another instrument, I think Subtractor's got something going on there. So if I was to play the same thing with the Subtractor, and there it is, peaking away, beep, 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 beep. Just going to click on my stop all. As I said, really, we should come up with a way of controlling this type of feedback. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into input and put that to a 0. I'm going to go and grab my if statement and do exactly like I did before here, so I can actually turn it off. And I'm going to bring this right down to a nice low key. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to go lower because I've got another idea I'm going to try. So now if I hit oh dear, I'm on a different keyboard here, aren't I? So let me make sure my big keyboard's on this one. Now obviously I can use that low key and it should cut it off. Now, as you can hear, we've got ourselves a little bit of a hanging note there because of the loop, what's going on, and I just had to do a bypass all just to kill that off. It won't always happen, but every now and then, because of all that MIDI which is going on and being pumped out, especially at the end there, it can just cause 1 or 2 little issues. So what I'm going to do now is I want to take a lot more control of what's going on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add myself another if statement. And I'm going to say to this, if this note is above a particular note, let's go quite high up in the scale. It doesn't really matter what it is. I'm going to have this set note now, because that's what we had that set note for. So if it is above, so it'll be the top one, I'm going to set the note to something low. If it's below that particular note, I'm just going to obviously go off to my transpose and transpose it, and after I set my note, I'm going to go back to the transpose. So now, if I play a key, it's obviously hit the if statement, it's reset the note to something lower, the transpose just adds 3 to it and carries on and carries on and carries on. Of course you can have a little bit of fun with these sort of things by changing the delay time and actually changing these values as well. So that value there, that sounded alright I think. But I'm going to change that delay time quite high, and with this type of sound, it's more likely going to go quite chiptune-y. So you can do some quite mad things with this, and that's all that is a very, very simple little loop, and I'm really just moving the note up, the start note, and obviously the start note is going to sound like it's getting faster and faster because obviously it's got less and less space to hit that high note before it resets. So obviously, as I say, you can be very, very extremely creative with this sort of thing. Let's have a play with some of this other stuff as well. So let me think of another patch to do. Okay, so we've got clock dividers we haven't looked at. We've got some velocity stuff. So the velocity stuff's very, very similar to the note stuff, where we can obviously do an offset. So if I was coming in and my velocity was at 60, I can offset it by a certain value above and below. We've got a randomized velocity, and I think I've got an idea I can do with that. We've got a set velocity, again with the set notes, and no matter how hard or soft I'm hitting the key, it's always going to come in at a certain velocity value. Say I'm going to put in a clock divider because we haven't talked about that. Chart switch we haven't looked at, and I'll do that as well. And some CV out stuff, yes, we'll have a quick look at that. And then we've got set seeders to do with the randomization stuff. So what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to reset this, and I think we should have a little bit of fun. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put my if statement in, and I'm going to actually have this set nice and low again. That'll probably do, that'll do. So if obviously everything above it, I'm going to connect that up to a delay, and I'm going to have that delay set to yeah, I'm going to have it set to an eighth. I'm going to have it forever playing, and from this delay I'm going to split off into a clock divider. Here we go, here's something new which we haven't looked at before. And also I'm going to very, very quickly just turn my grid so I can move things around. So I'm going to connect that into this clock divider. So what a clock divider does, and you can have up to 4 outputs on the clock divider. I'm just going to leave it on 2 for the moment. And you set your division of what you'd like your division to be. And what I'm going to do, and what that means is, you can think of it as, in this case, I've set this to 2. So it's going to have the first MIDI event, nothing's going to happen to this clock divider. On the second MIDI event in, it's going to activate. And it's actually going to send a signal out. It's going to send, obviously, what the MIDI events come in, it's going to send it out. But nothing's going to happen to this top one. On the third note, or the third event which comes into here, nothing's going to happen because none of these are divisible by 2. But then obviously on the fourth one, they are both going to play because they're both. We'll actually see this working in action, and it'll make perfect sense to you. As this is actually set to an eighth, you can actually work out your timings. So this bottom one is going to be then working on quarter notes, and this one's going to be working on half notes. And what I'm going to output these to is, let's go to a CV out. I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm going to create a few of these. I'm going to have a couple over there, I'm going to put another one up there, I'm going to have these 2 here. Now the CV outs obviously relate to on the back where you've got your gate and note CV out stuff, so we can actually output these to other instruments. And I'm going to output that into this one, and I'm going out on channel 1. I'm going to output this to this CV out, and I'm going to put that onto channel 2. I'm now going to build some more stuff up the top here. Let's actually have a look and see what we haven't had to play with. So set velocity, I'm going to set the velocity, so no matter how hard or soft I am going to hit my key, it's always going to come in at 64. But I'm actually going to also change that now, and I'm going to actually put a random straight after it. So what that's going to do is, no matter how hard or soft I hit it, it's going to come in at 64, and I'm going to put it into the random, and I'm going to offset this. I'm actually going to have the minimum amount quite low, so it means it's not going to go much below the 64. In fact, it will go down to 53. But I'm going to actually have it so it can actually go quite high. And then out of this random, let's have a look and see what we haven't played with yet. A chant switch. Oh yeah, this is quite a good switch. Again, with a chant switch, you can go up to 4, so you can have up to 4 outputs. And a chant switch uses something called weights. Now, the best way of thinking of weights is, let's say, in this case, I've got, as you can see, I've got, sorry, it's over here, aren't we? A 3 and a 1. It'd be a bit like if I wrote your name on 3 bits of paper and I write my name on 1 bit of paper, we put it into a pot and randomly pick one out. Now, I've got 1 in 4 chance of it being my name. Obviously, you've got a 3 in 4 chance of it being your name. So you've got more chances of your name being pulled out. But I've still got quite, it's a random, so I've still got a chance. And nothing stops with this chance switch of it picking my name out 10 times on the trot, because it is random. The probability, we're coming into probability now, is it's not probably going to happen. It's going to be, your name's going to be probably more frequent than it's going to be my name, because you've got more in the pot than I have. Now what I'm going to do with this chant switch is, I'm going to have it so the top weight is slightly heavier, so it's got more chance of it not actually doing anything. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to go into a delay. And I'm going to make this delay a count of 2. Whoops. And if you hold the shift key down, by the way, on this, you can actually, it's easier to dial certain things in. And I'm going to have this going on a frequency of a 16th. So that one's going on an 1/8. I'm going to have this one going on 16th, so it's going twice as fast. And in fact, I want a count of 1 because I've got the dry, so sorry, that's going to give me 2 outputs. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to shift this along, and I'm just going to grab some of this stuff and move this along a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to take that. Yeah, I know what I'm going to do here. Sorry. Being a bit scatterbrained, so I've got an idea of what I'm going to do with this. And I think this would work actually a little bit better, what my plan is. I'm going to actually output that to channel 3, and I'm going to directly hook it up to that velocity, so that's the random velocity. I'm also going to send the signal along to the chant switch, which is then going to delay, and I'm going to have that delay going into a sequential switch, which is only going to be two steps. Let's bring that across. Oops. And then I'm going to have that going out to this CV out, which I'm going to make channel 4. And I'm going to have this CV out, which I'm going to make channel 3. Now you could say, oh, hang on a second, I've already done a channel 3 and it's perfectly okay. I could take this output here and bring it over and hook it in there. I think that looks a little bit messy. And don't forget, I could have had this way off somewhere else, so rather than scrolling all over the screen, I can actually output it to that CV out without having to scroll all over the place. So this has turned into quite a biggish sort of patch, a little bit confusing. So I say we've got a delay going down into a clock divider, which is going to do things. In fact, on the clock divider, one thing I didn't talk about was the start value. The start value at the moment is 0, so that, as I said earlier, I'm going to need 2 signals for this one to trigger. If I put the start value on 1, when that signal comes down, it's already on 1, so actually this one's going to activate. If I put it on 2, nothing's going to activate, but on the second signal comes down, they will both activate. And then if I put it onto 3, when that signal comes down, they will both activate, so the first time round. I'm going to have it on 1, so when the first signal comes in, it's going to activate this one, as well as obviously pushing the signal up this chain as well. So up this chain, we're setting the velocity, we're doing a bit of randomization on the velocity. Just in case you're thinking, well, why set the velocity if I'm doing a randomization? Because if I played really, really quiet, well, yeah, the randomization will happen low down, but I might say, no, I never really want the minimum velocity to go below, well, the minimum mark. So by setting a velocity here, I'm pushing it up, and then I am saying, well, that is my true minimum. Whereas if I played it really quiet and I didn't have this, it would go really quiet, i.e. on some instruments you wouldn't even be able to hear it. I'm then branching at this to send it out of one, and I'm going to send it into another. I've got myself a delay, and I've got myself some switches, and we're going out over there. And you may notice that the output itself is not set. Well, that's fine. If I now play this instrument, of course there's no sound because there's nothing going on in the output, and we've got to wire up, obviously, the gate and the note. So actually, let's do that now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to bring up another instrument. I've actually seem to be liking the EDM at the moment. I'm just going to quickly change the patch. Just around to the back. Gate to a drums. That's going to be CV2, which is going to the snare, the CV3, and this was the CV output 4. So now, if we hit play, you can see we've got some drums. So what I'm actually going to do now over here is I'm going to add myself another CV output. There we go. It's going to go into channel 1. What I'm going to do to the Eden over here is I'm actually going to combine it up, and then I'm going to take the gate and the note and I'm going to put it into the sequencer here, and then theoretically, let's make sure everything is set. There we go, I didn't think that would be set. Receive notes. So now when I play over here, we're going to get something a little bit more musical, and we can start chaining these things together. I think we have actually covered all the nodes. I think the only one I haven't spoken about actually is the set seed. The set seed is obviously to do with randomization stuff. Randomization works off a seed. If you give it the same seed and restart randomization, it actually will repeat that randomization you had. So by changing the seed, you get a totally different randomization. But you can set so many events up. And so after so many events, you can actually say, no, reset that seed, and you're going to actually get that same random pattern. It's, I think it's on the Quad Node generator. We have that like that freeze function. So it's obviously doing its randomization. You can say, hey, freeze that particular portion. It's sort of along them sort of lines. Now, I think I've absolutely covered everything going on. I do have a couple of larger patches. Where are we? Here's one. And what these patches do, sorry, I've scrolled it off the screen, so I need to scroll down. There's nothing stopping you from stacking, you know, a delta on top of a delta on top of a delta. And because I've got so many things which are very, very similar, I can sort of very quickly swizz these in and out. This particular patch sounds something like gives that kind of feel. And then obviously I can say, actually, I don't want that chord. I think I've got something else going on down here. Sound a bit better. But as you can see, as I say, you can really start stacking these things up. This is quite a good patch, actually, this one here. So let's just turn everything off so you can hear it on its own. It's a massive patch, as you can sort of see. There's quite a lot of stuff floating all over the place, and that sounds like all box standard stuff. So there's my if, so I can turn it on and off. Got a simple delay into the switches. And as you can see, I've got this sequential switch going off into multiple delays, which is then obviously firing off the other sequential switches. And it's just transposing it all over the place. And obviously I was tied in up at one point because I had so much going into that output. And I'm also sending it out so I can link up another device as well. Yeah, I've really had a lot of fun with Delta, and I do think it's without a doubt, for me, it's one of the better players. My two top players would be Delta and the MIDI CV converter. Yeah. So anyway, if you're still with me, because I know this is an extra long video, and I'm really sorry because I'm starting to waffle as usual. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.